recording. I think it's recording. All right, happy Friday, everybody. This is our 13 Automation Hour webinar in our series, and get my PowerPoint moving. Okay, great. All right, so our normal routine is we try and meet every other Friday. With the exception of this month, we had some scheduling issues. So today we have Doug, who is our second time presenter and Salesforce MVP. Next week we'll have Stuart, and then the following week Martin. And then in April we have Ian. So I am in the process of getting the other speakers slotted into the remaining session for April into June. So we should have something started by the next session or the following one. But if you're out there and you have a cool process automation use case that you'd like to share with the community, definitely click on that link and submit your idea, and we will be in touch. All right, all lines are muted. If you have questions throughout the presentation, post them on the questions section. And we'll also continue on with questions after the session on the Success Community Salesforce Automation Hour, and we will be posting the recording out on our website that will link to our YouTube channel. So we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Concrete.io. Thanks. And here are your co-hosts, Rakesh, Jen, and David. And if you're going to Southeast Dreaming, all three of us will be out there where we will be presenting. I will be doing a session on so you want to go with the flow but don't know how. So that's the beginner visual workflow session. And David and Rakesh are tag teaming for a session on learn to crawl, walk, and run with Process Builder. So if you're out in Atlanta or you're planning to go to Southeast Dreaming, stop by and say hi to us. And with that, I am going to hand this over to Doug Ayers to present.
Thank you, Jen. Get my screen up here. Awesome. It's great to be back on the show. I feel like a TV celebrity. Thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Doug Ayers. I'm a senior developer at Gears CRM, a Gold Alliance partner in consultancy. And I write on my blog, douglascayers.com, about various Salesforce solutions and fun things that I'm up to. You can also find me on Twitter, and I've got quite a few projects out on github.com with some of the different solutions, particularly the ones we're going to be showing today. So if you want to go out there and grab some and get those installed in your org. Occasionally I have some videos on YouTube of quick how-tos or copies of broadcasts like today. Today's topic, which I've lovingly called Chatterbot, is about enabling Process Builder automation, and the overarching theme we're going to be seeing is how we overcome a lack of object support in Process Builder around the Chatter product, and how we get around that to enable some really cool automation features. It's broken out into 4 different projects, which I've blogged about on my website, and I worked in coordination with my good friend Zach Boyd, who's the director of Salesforce at Fruit of the Loom, and we were just trying to tackle and solve various problems that he was running into with his users and I was running into with some of my clients, and so here we go. We came out with these solutions. What we're going to see for each one for the demos is what was the business use case, what requirement were we trying to solve, what was the proposed solution we wanted to go with first, then we hit some roadblocks, so what was our workaround, and then we'll demo how we use that workaround to implement the solution. So Chatterbot for topics. what we're seeing is users, they've adopted Chatter really well, they're engaged, and they would start asking questions to the administrators or to other people. And as we're moderating the feed, we start to realize, some of these conversations probably need to be turned into an official case so that they can be routed to the appropriate support team. We can report on it, track it, follow up on it, and it not just get lost in the ether that is the Chatter feed, right? Now we tried to train users, what's the standard operating procedures, how should you log a case, even tried to put in quick actions right in the publisher so they could just create a case right there. But just too many clicks, I suppose, and had to sit back and realize, well, we need to meet the users where they are. They're going to post a Chatter message, they're going to @mention us, and they're going to move on with their life, and they're still going to expect that their need is going to be met. So we needed to find a way, how can we quickly and easily flag a Chatter post or comment that it needs to turn into a case. And that way it's not going to be too much of a burden for the admin, it's not too much of a burden for the end user. So Chatter topics is something that we thought would work really well because you can assign them via a hashtag, or after you've posted a message, you get prompted to add a topic to it. Or at any time for a new or an existing post, you have this little arrow on the top right, and you can click that and choose to add a topic. A fourth option, which isn't shown in the screenshot here, if you add a comment to a conversation, you could use a hashtag then. So at any point in the life of a Chatter post, we could quickly add a topic. And if you're unfamiliar with topics or the hashtags, it's just a way on the platform to organize your messages and conversations. Very similar to how you do it on Twitter or other social media sites. So we popped up Process Builder and thought, hey, we will try and detect when this hashtag or topic is being used. The feed item object, which represents the actual Chatter post, is supported in Process Builder. However, that would only allow us to inspect if the topic was being assigned when that record was being created, like you actually used the hashtag in your Chatter post. But we already talked about the tag could be assigned later on. Maybe an admin comes up later on and says, oh, this conversation should be assigned to this topic. Or a comment came in, and that's when the hashtag was used. Well, unfortunately, the feed comment object is not supported, so we wouldn't be able to detect when that, if that's how you were assigning the topic. We also discovered there was actually an object called topic assignment. That would have been the most ideal place to monitor because no matter how the topic got assigned to the Chatter post, whether it was a hashtag, you did it through the comment, the original post, did it through the little arrow screen, you would get notified. But again, it doesn't support, it's not supported in Process Builder. Well, first thing, you all can do your part and help us overcome this limitation by going out to the idea exchange and voting up some ideas. But as awesome admins, we are not to be deterred. So our new solution design is implement a simple trigger on the topic assignment object. And then when topics are being assigned, we'll just copy some data into a custom object. So we're just kind of creating a shadow object off to the side, capture just enough data for us to do what we would like. And then of course Process Builder here in the bottom of the image is supported on custom objects, and that's the channel that we'll go through to implement our magic. So just a small detour. And once we have that in place, let's see a quick demo of what we can do with Chatterbot for topics. The first thing I need to do is I'm going to set up a particular topic that I'm interested in monitoring. In this case, let's say we have one called help. Now, with the trigger behind the scenes, whenever the help topic is assigned, it's going to create a child record called Chatterbot Topic Assignment. It's here that Process Builder will listen for these assignments and take action. In the demo that we have today, I'm going to automate the creation of a case and then follow up with that post author with information about it. So we'll say, hey, someone please help me. Whatever the message could be. They make their post, trigger copied the record, wrote it out in the child object, Process Builder picks it up, and there we go. Process Builder picked it up, went out, created a new case, and then posted a comment back to let the post author know, hey, we've heard you, something's going to be done. Lets them know why we created the case, because they use a special topic, and then we conveniently give them a link to go look at that case. So we'll jump in over here. And just looking at our case, we can see we've set the origin to be from Chatter, so we kind of know what channel it's coming from. It's been assigned to our appropriate support queue. And then similar to web to case, we took the information about the user who had written that Chatter post and copied some of their information into the case so the agent knows who they need to follow up with. And then conveniently for the agent, we give them a link back to that original Chatter conversation so they can get some more context. And there we got our automation. And so we've met the business user where they're at. This is the path of least resistance that they want to use for communicating. And as the administrator, we were able to just assign the topics, make sure it gets assigned, whether the user did it or we do it. Now support is going to be going down the appropriate channel that we want. Now let's see how that was done through Process Builder. Come into our Create Case with Flow. So very simply is just going to be monitoring that custom object for those records being created. Confirm that it's a topic that we care about so we know which actions we want to take. So you could have different types of topics and fire off different types of automation. For help, I'm going to launch a flow because I want to do a few things. Create the case, create a Chatter post back, know what the case number was, that sort of thing. And so to my flow, I'm going to pass in as an S-object input variable a reference to this Chatterbot topic assignment record. Come over to our flow. The first thing it's going to do is gather some information about that Chatter post. What was the parent record? Was it posted to someone's feed, or was it Chatter post on an account? And what the actual content was. Then we look up some information about that user, their full name, email address, company, which we're going to use on the case in those web to case fields so that we give the agent some information about who they need to follow up with. The next step is we find out where was that Chatter post occurring. If it was just on the feed, that's fine. But if it had occurred specifically on an account or a contact, then we want to keep up with that ID so that we can set that reference on the case. So it's like a tiny bit of extra intelligence here into our flow so that we can have, if you were asking questions about enabling a contact to be a community user, a partner user, we'll keep the case all related to everything that's going on. Then we simply create our case. And then I look the case back up so that I can retrieve that case number. I wanted to give the user in the Chatter post back that case number. And then the last part, this was a little fun one, we're using a fourth or another project that we had developed called Chatterbot for Feeds. This last step allows us to post a Chatter message or comment impersonating any user. So we get to set who we want that message to be posted as. We then get to set where we want the post to go. Are we going to post it to someone's profile, to a Chatter group, or perhaps to another record like an account or contact, or if we were to specify the chatter post ID, then we'll actually post a comment. Then the third parameter is, what do you want that message to be? So in this example, I have a flow variable that holds the ID of my Chatterbot user, but you could have specified any user that you wish. And then I specified the actual chatter message ID that kicked off our process. So that's why we saw the comment back here. And then I just have a flow text template variable where I just cobbled together some information in the link. And this piece right here is just an invocable apex. So you're able to call and use this module from Flow like we are here, or even within Process Builder, which we'll see in a future demo. Okay. The next solution of automation is taking actions for Chatterbot with groups. So what we're observing is that we have some community moderators or just group managers, and they have to keep up with when people are joining their group. And we might want these groups to be high touch. We want to proactively welcome the members when they join, perhaps send them a chatter message or an email, or take some other action. We might even be interested in taking action when someone leaves a group. But at the moment, this is all being done manually. And we want our teams to work smarter, not harder. So where we can automate, we want to. So our solution proposal is, well, we'll just automate sending the emails or chatter posts, right? Whenever someone asks, can we just have this done instead of being manual, it's like, of course, we'll just automate it. And so we're looking specifically for when people join or leave the group, as well as whenever the groups are potentially created or even updated. We go to Process Builder, but the collaboration group and collaboration group member objects are not supported. So there was no way from the Process Builder standpoint for us to know that anyone was joining or leaving groups or that new groups were even being created. You can do your part to help us by going up to the idea exchange and voting up these ideas, specifically about how to send emails to chatter members, or more specifically, just adding more objects to be supported in Process Builder. Again, as awesome admins, we don't let anything hold us back. We just keep thinking and come up with another solution. And as we did with Chatterbot for topics, we saw that these two objects supported triggers. So I put in the simplest of trigger and copy the necessary data into a custom object. And again, from the custom object, we're able to have our Process Builder monitor, know that something went on, and then fire off our magic. So let's see a demo of what we can do with that. Come over here. We will switch over to Chatterbot for groups. And similar with the Chatterbot for topics, I need to tell it which group I want to be monitoring. So I'm going to come over to the group tab. We'll pick on this group called Chatterbot for groups. And I'm in Salesforce Classic, and so I'll just grab the ID from up here in the URL. We'll come back, paste our ID, and click Save. Now, anytime that group now becomes updated or somebody joins or leaves the group, then that trigger is going to update all this information, which is a bunch of fields that come from that group object. But more importantly, the Chatterbot group members, we will be inserting or updating records here, and it's at this level that Process Builder will monitor to know that someone joined or left the group. Now, in these two examples where I came in and I set up the configuration record, all of these solutions have two modes that they can run in. Manual, like in this demo, only the groups or topics that you want to monitor will fire off the automation, or you can set it via a custom setting to run in automated mode. which means at any time that a topic is being assigned, groups are created, people are joining or leaving groups, these records, the Chatterbot groups, Chatterbot topics, all of those records in the custom objects will be created automatically on the fly. So you, as the admin, can have a balance there of thinking, okay, do I want this to be working, org-wide all the time, or do I really want to slim it down and there's only specific groups or topics that I really care about? Okay, so we'll come back over to our group, and here I'll join, and then Process Builder is listening for that record to have been created. We'll come back, and there we go. And here we've automated our welcome post. Oh, that's so lovely. That's great. And I can come in here and comment. I say, thank you. By the way, I do have a question. And so the moderator or whoever you wanted to have made this post, they don't necessarily know that the post automatically went out. But if they have their chatter notification settings set up, they might get a push notification on Salesforce 1 or an email when that user who just joined comments back on the post. And the person here, they don't know any better of whether this was an automated or a manual post per se. But now that I have commented back, this is going to pull Chatterbot into the conversation, right? And so there's the best of both worlds. The moderator's not having to monitor as much for when new people are joining or leaving, but they get notified based on that automated message. And then if I were to, for whatever reason, want to leave the group, we can monitor for that in Process Builder and take action. So we could come back and here we could say a different message, goodbye, thanks for visiting, all that fun stuff. So how do we wire that together? Come back to Process Builder. Look at our group membership changes. And we're monitoring our custom object, right? Because the standard ones weren't supported, but our trigger is going to write records into our custom object. And so I'm looking for whenever this record is created or edited. And if the is member checkbox is true, then I know that this person is joining the group. Or if it became false, I know that that member is leaving the group, and so I can take a different action. And what I'm calling here is that invocable apex that we saw when we were creating the case, how we posted that comment back. And so here we're just calling it directly from Process Builder. For simplicity and transparency in this example, I have hard-coded the ID of the user that I wanted to be the author of that post. So this is the ID of my Chatterbot user, but this could be any user that you cared about. You could even have further criteria in Process Builder to say, well, if this was group X, I need Sally, the community moderator, to post the messages, but if it was group Y, I need, Donald to do it. Then we've got our user group and record. Where did we want this to be posted? And we just said that particular chatter group that the user belongs to. And then for the message itself, just a formula of some text that, pieced together to mention the user and that sort of fun stuff. And again, any of the code and such for the fancy part here for making the chatter post as any user is available on the GitHub projects and blog posts on my website. Now, you don't have to do this. Once you get to Process Builder, really that's key. You can do anything and everything to your heart's desire that you want to leverage Process Builder in Flow for. Just happening to show you, if you were to leverage this extra module, how you can post as any user. All right. Next up, Chatterbot for files. So what we were observing is we had a team that was very collaborative, and they're working on these project plans and just other documents, and they needed to know when different people on the team were making edits to the file. And they liked the concept of chatter files and being able to follow the file and just simply upload it there. They weren't, having to instant message each other or send emails back and forth. But after a while, they realized just following the file, they were only getting an automated notice in their daily digest. And that may be good for some teams, but for this particular group of people, they needed a more real-time notification. And so they couldn't wait for the daily digest email. They needed to know as soon as someone uploaded a new version. And what this team had done is they had started asking the people, whenever you uploaded version, send an email out to the team. Okay, well, that's just an added burden to anyone on the team. It's not too terribly productive. And surely we can find a way to automate this, right? And I guess at this point, you probably could use Quip and start getting some collaboration and notifications that way. But the focus of this presentation is on chatter. So we're going to talk about chatter files. Our solution proposal is to automate those real-time notifications to anyone who is following the file that was getting uploaded. Okay. Well, I pull up Process Builder, and as we've seen with the other solutions, the object that I want to monitor just simply isn't supported. So I could not find content document or content version. They just weren't there. You can do your part by going to the Idea Exchange and voting up ideas to have these objects added. Thankfully, those objects do support a trigger. So like with all the other solutions, I put together a simple trigger that was going to monitor when those records were changing. And then I just copy the necessary field values into a shadow object. And from there, we can leverage Process Builder to do all of our magic. So let's see a demo. Come over, switch over to Chatterbot for files. And since I'm in manual mode, I'll need to explicitly tell the system which file I want to listen to. And so we'll open up in a new tab. My favorite file to test with is this broken laptop. I don't know why. I just love it. And then we'll copy the ID. Come back. And as the admin, we're now setting up this file for anyone who wants to be notified of instant changes. All they have to do is follow the file. And whenever the file gets changed, then the trigger will update all this other pertinent information. Okay, so we'll say I want to follow the file, and maybe there's some other team members that are following the file as well, and as soon as I upload a new version, we'll say something cool, automation hour demo, and our trigger will pick up on this. Process Builder will fire out the email. Over to my email, you should see it, boom. There we go. And we can see we've got the title and link to the file that had been changed, what version it is now, and more importantly, the reason for the change. So even if we were waiting on the daily digest from Chatter, that doesn't include this reason for change. So all you know is that something did happen to the file, you just don't know what it was. In this particular solution that I put together, I just wanted to play around with also including the image or the file as an attachment. So this was optional, but this was another way to get the file to the people that were wanting to know when changes occurred even more quickly. They didn't have to go log in to Salesforce. So depending on your security preferences, you could have the file attached or not. Okay. And then if we come back and see what the trigger updated, we'll see that all these fields now got updated. And you can use those for whatever purposes that you wanted. Let's go over to Process Builder. We'll look at our process for notifying file followers of the changes. We're just looking at our custom object whenever the record was created or edited. And what we're looking for is that this file version number changed. we went from 2 to 3. And from there, I called a flow. You don't have to call a flow. You could send an email alert directly from here, do whatever you wish. But I wanted to do some slightly fancier things. And I'm going to pass into my flow an SObject input variable, which references this Chatterbot file record. So we jump over to our flow. The first thing that I had to tackle was, how on earth do I get a list of the people that follow the file? Well, I did find that there was an object called entity subscription. That's cool. Except that object really only had 2 fields. One was the entity that you're following. In this case, it would have been the file ID. And then who has subscribed to that record, the user ID. Well, I ran into some obstacles. One, all I had was a user ID, so that didn't give me what their email address or their name was. And within Flow, there was no way for me to kind of traverse that user relationship and try and pull back some of those extra fields. It also is not an object that I could create formula fields off of. So the only way I could get to some of that extra user information was to either do a loop in Flow, querying for each user one at a time. Unfortunately, that's not very bulk friendly. That's not very fun. So I resorted to doing it in Apex. The more I went down this path, discovered that the entity subscription object is actually very special. There's a lot of security concerns about it and all the anyways. So I actually needed quite a bit of Apex to even do what I consider something simple as who follows this record. So that's why I had to have this extra invocable Apex method. But all it does is you give it the document ID, and then the output is a collection of email addresses, the text. Okay, so the collection of each email address of the active followers. Then the decision just checks to see, okay, did we have any followers for the file? If yes, then I wanted to send an email. Now, you don't have to do it the way I did. You could have used a standard email template or that sort of thing. But I wanted to send an email that also provided that option to attach the file or not. And so in my specific use case, I had yet another invocable Apex method that again is available on my GitHub project, but you could have done any other out-of-the-box operations if you wished. And so I just pass in the reference to that record. I am leveraging an email template to format what the message is, pass in that collection of email addresses who we were going to notify, so any of the followers, and then whether or not I wanted to have that file attached. And there you go. And I think that does it. Thank you so much. Any questions?
We do have some questions out there.
Okay.
So the first one is, what if the case client decides to communicate with you on the case via chatter and enters another hash topic in his post?
Great question. So if a second topic were to be added to the conversation, down here, my second topic, right? The original topic, help, has already been assigned. And even if I did, can we assign help again? No. Again, just the one. The topic help has already been assigned. So that piece is not going to fire a second time. So I'll just refresh again. See, there's not an extra case that got created. But for adding a different topic, we do now have 2 topics assigned, one called help and one uncreatively called topic. if I had in Process Builder something to monitor for this second topic, that action would occur, right? If you wanted to only do something if other topics didn't already exist, your Process Builder, I go back to that one. Oh, create a case. I was looking for the word topic. Where the action, maybe this wasn't the help topic, it was whatever the second topic is. You could launch a flow, and then you would just need to try and find out how many other topic assignment records exist for that record, and kind of filter out whether you wanted to do something or not. Is that answering your question?
I don't see any typing going on from Mark. So we're going to assume it does unless you post another thing. So Kevin asks, you're passing IDs for users since this is not a best practice per and provides a URL. Is this something you are stuck with due to the limitations in Process Builder, or are you able to pass something that doesn't require changes between the sandbox and deployment to production? I know this comes up a lot.
I'm assuming the question is referring to where I've hard-coded the ID of the author that I wanted to make these follow-up comments from. If that is the question, I absolutely agree. What I have done here, not best practice. I hard-coded the ID here just for transparency and let you know, at the end of the day, this is what matters. You just specify a user ID, run with it. As a best practice, we want all of these hard-coded IDs to actually be outside of our flow, outside of Process Builder. I personally prefer to put things in setup under a custom hierarchy setting because those are referenceable in flow or, so custom hierarchy. Not a list setting and not metadata, but a custom hierarchy setting, because those fields that you set up there can be referenced, and that's where you could keep the IDs. And so when you refresh the sandbox, you just go to your custom setting, update those accordingly, and you don't have to go touch the Process Builder or Flow versions. Another tactic that I've seen is people use custom labels because those can also be referenced. So you could create a label and say, Chatterbot user ID, and we'll put the value, I don't know what a user ID is, but just put something there. And then we'll be able to reference this Chatterbot user ID label in Flow or Process Builder. And this is where you have the hard-coded ID. Your process and Flow don't have to change. Great question. Do as I say, not as I did.
And then when you reference it, I believe it's a formula, and then you go to the system global variables, and that's where you'll find custom labels and custom settings.
Yes, I should have deleted that one, so we could have seen it somewhere. Oh, let's go pull back the field. This is what you were just talking about. Oh, good grief. No. Formula. I'm getting there, Jen. Almost there. System variables. And so you click on system variables, and for the custom settings, it's going to be under setup. And then you would reference one of your hierarchical settings and grab a field from there and have fun with that. So this was my setting right there. There's a period, if you can see it, and that was the field from that custom setting. And this would be a way for me to avoid hard coding the ID in here and just reference it from this setting or label. Good question.
All right, and The other question is, could the trigger invoke a headless flow to pass in variables to avoid the need to create a custom object?
Great question. To call the flow, I would almost say yes, it probably could. I just hadn't thought of that. But I know that you wouldn't be able to call Process Builder directly because Process Builder, you can only invoke that by going through the REST API, and that requires OAuth authentication and a bunch of junk. But yeah, we probably could have launched a headless flow and then used configuration somewhere to tell the trigger, hey, pass the S object, or don't even have the custom object, right? Just pass data into your flow, and then you just have input variables for everything that you wanted. Hey, that sounds like a good round two. How can we do this without the custom objects? I like it. But it does mean that you're going to go straight into flow, and from flow you can't directly call Process Builder. I did blog about how you can, but again, you have to go through the REST API and all that jazz. And if you want to make the solution available to a wider audience, being able to kick things off directly from Process Builder is easier for some folks than having to figure out how to configure flow. But if you didn't want to have the custom object, by all means, yes, you could have had the trigger call the headless flow. Great feedback.
Right. Can you reference custom metadata values from the system variables as well?
No, not to my knowledge. The custom metadata, I think, behaves just like a custom list setting, so you'd have to actually query for it. Unless, Jen, you all know any different.
No, you can't use it in Process Builder, but in Flow, you can do a lookup and call a custom metadata type that way.
Yeah, so you'd have to get to a point where you can query it. So to the original ask, can you reference custom metadata through the $ setup like we saw in the Process Builder formula? No, you cannot. So you'd have to do a custom hierarchy setting or label. Good question.
Okay, are there any other questions out there related to Doug's presentation, or any general automation questions that you have out there about Process Builder, Flow, or anything like that? I'm going to give a couple minutes for folks. Oh, we have one more. When I do a dynamic choice, I want to display multiple fields. How do I do this? Is this possible? So I'm assuming you're referencing Flow in doing the interactive screens with the users. Thank you for clarifying. I don't know if you can do multiple values. You know, Doug?
No,
I personally, when I need to do something with a dynamic pick list like that, I always throw a custom formula on that object where I can concatenate it into one field. That way you can see a little bit more. But there's not a way, that's one of the limitations that annoys me, that I know of.
You can create a custom table in Flows that's similar to a list view in any object where you can display different data of an object, like account opportunity, first opportunity name, close date, date for 5 to 10 records. You can do that.
But you
need two separate things.
For the label, I think I would understand what David had mentioned, have a custom field or formula here that you want to use as the label, which concatenates the different data together, like account name and account industry.
Okay, so let's say, I will tell you one requirement. So for example, so you have an opportunity and opportunity product, okay? So I don't want to use the standard opportunity product button where you can select a price book and all. So I want to create a custom things. So using flow, you can create a screen where you can display your product code in the list view, product code, product name, product price, and the whatever description and all. And in the below, you can display a dynamic choice, either multi-select, picklist, or whatever. So user can view the data at the top of the table and select the data at the bottom.
That's neat.
So that is possible.
Is that something is that an option on here that I would be adding it, or is that a different component that you use?
That is a multiple components that you have to use. Give me a second. I have something in my demo. Let me show you if I can.
All right, so while we wait for that, does anyone else have, okay, so Kevin says, in flows, how can I limit Picklist values to those enabled, available for a particular record type?
Oh, you had to ask about a record type, didn't you? Not without code, unfortunately. And the only way to retrieve the pick list values that are assigned to a specific record type, you have to go through the metadata API, which necessitates that the running user has the modify all data permission. So in other words, an administrator. One workaround is that you just you would have like some kind of a batch job or scheduled job, or manually do it yourself. Have a custom object or custom list setting, and you just have to sync the values that are appropriate over there. So you have to really rebuild your cross-reference in another object. There are some solutions out there that I think can query it for you or do that on your behalf, but that's the only way I know how to do it. And then your choice would be querying that custom object instead of being a pick list field. Go ahead, Rakesh.
I've just saved a file through GTM, so you can see. I have saved an attachment. If you go to the GTM, you can see attachment somewhere, I think. Yeah, this is somewhat.
How did you build that table?
That is use of template, record lookup, fast lookup, and a couple of different things.
Oh, and then did you do a loop and build a string and the string contents were an HTML table?
Good.
Okay, I got you. But this is just output text, so the user wouldn't be able to make a selection from here.
No,
right.
That Salesforce doesn't support.
I think the original question was, how could we, here we've got a select list, and we see the product name. How could we show more information within the name itself? Now, you had a whole lot of information, so this is probably a better way to kind of show them, and then they just cross-reference visually. But if there was a formula field here, you could have more data, but then you would be using like the dynamic choice and querying data somewhere, not the which screen did I have up? You wouldn't have one of the input fields where the choice was just a pick list. Where do we see that here?
But thing I have to remember is a pick list can have limited set of characters. You cannot add unlimited character to a pick list.
Right. We're not talking about on the pick list itself. We're just talking about the dynamic.
At the end, everything is
right. Dynamic record choice. A record for each account. Now, to your point, there may be a limit here, but I assume this could just pull back any formula field and use that as the display. But then what got actually stored would be the ID of the account or product or something. Anyways, like anything, multiple ways to skin that cat. This is pretty neat, pulling up and generating an HTML table. I think Rakesh or David or somebody's got a blog about how to generate that HTML table and output that into your flow. So definitely go read up on that.
Is that a blog article on your automation champion, Rakesh, or no?
Yes, sorry. Yeah, what did you say, Jim?
Is what you built here something that you posted on Automation Champion, or no?
No, not yet.
Okay. Okay. So maybe Mo can look for it sometime in the future. There's an interest for it. Okay, so there were a few more that came in. Also, is there a workaround to trigger flows on delete? This is a massive limitation.
Is the question asking what's a workaround for when records are deleted because you can't have process builder or workflow rules fire or something?
I'm not sure, Mo, can you elaborate on that? And then we'll move on to the next question while you elaborate. What is the suggested way to handle null objects when referencing their field to avoid flows crashing? Is there a better option than a decision to check if the S object is null?
So I'm assuming kind of what I just did here, right? Coming out of this flow, there's an S object variable. It could, a collection variable, but it could be any variable, right? And I want to do something down here with it. But I know if I try and use it and it was null or not assigned, it's going to blow up. So I have this decision that check to say, is this variable null, false? If I understood the question, they're asking, is there a way to be null safe without having this check? And my thought is not in Flow or Process Builder. Workflow rules and formula fields are very gracious to us, and if we try and refer to something that is null or not assigned, it gracefully just resolves into no value. But in Process Builder and Flow, it's more like when you're writing code, and if there's nothing there, it blows up. Jen, David, Rakesh, do you all have any workarounds that you all do other than having lots of decisions?
No. I'm very paranoid and put it way more in than I need.
Yeah.
No.
So that's just a limitation of this tool. You have to be extra cautious.
And as I guess kind of annoying as it is, it does help you focus a little bit more on what you're expecting your flow to do, because you have to validate, the expected outcome of the previous actions. So it really makes you stop and think for a second, which is one reason I don't necessarily mind it, compared to workflow rules where you can just build something and you're not really saying what you expect to have happen, or the other scenarios when what you expect doesn't happen.
Right, because with, say, workflow rules, you're not going to immediately get an error, so you don't really know if it worked or it didn't work, but it's definitely going to blow up here with Process Builder or Flow if you've not accounted for all your ducks being in a row and having valid input data.
All right, so we got clarification from Mo on the question. When the record is deleted, I want Flow to be triggered by passing in the deleted record ID to the custom button, then obviously perform an action on the parent, etc. Recently I had an issue and had to use a trigger to perform this.
Great question. So out of the box, no. Workflow rules, process builder, flow, all those automation things don't fire when a record is deleted. It is beyond me why it's not. But going along with another listener's question about can we have a trigger launch a flow, potentially we could wire up a before delete trigger, right? And just pass in that information to a flow. So if we built out something that you configure all that, then at least you would have some way to capture that a record is about to be deleted, and flow could do anything else that it needed. Update parent records, go write information off to a log, cause an error so that the delete doesn't occur, validate that the user is supposed to be able to delete that if you have extra security beyond just object level permissions. So that sounds like a fun little project to put together.
So what I've had a scenario where we had to take actions on a deleted record, and what we did was we built a flow, called this from a Visualforce page, and basically overwrote the standard delete button. So that would execute the flow to then do all these things before it actually deleted the record. So that's an option as well.
Yes, so if you know that the delete is only going to occur from the website, then you can come to, like what you were saying, the button links and actions, and I'm trying to come up to it. There's the delete action, right? And I think what you were saying, Jen, is you actually overrode it with a Visualforce
page that basically invoked the flow.
Right.
Another option is something like call your flow from Apex trigger.
Yeah, so if we write the trigger, we could launch the flow. If you don't want to write a trigger, you could overwrite this delete action with the Visualforce page. The overriding of the default action, this only supports when the delete occurs from the Salesforce UI. So folks just need to keep that aware. Like you click the button or the link, but if you were to delete it through data loader or some other channel, the delete action override actually won't be supported. So you just got to know what your use case is and use the appropriate solution. Great questions.
All right, I think we're at end.
All right.
Hold on, there's one more. There's one more that just stuck in.
Sneak it in.
Can we use date ranges like this month, next month, etc. in flows in a fast lookup? Did this recently and did not work, so had to use a formula instead. Would be awesome if there's a workaround, if not currently supported.
Well, that's a great question. I don't think I've ever had to do that. Do a record lookup based on filtering by the date. Do y'all know if you can use a relative date here? I'm going to say no, but because I think it wants like an actual date.
You could use a formula.
Oh, a formula to try and compute what today is, but this needs to end up being a actual date, right? You can't just say today.
You'd have to use like a formula and do like today, and then and it would actually be the flow date, the flow current date field, and then you could subtract or add value from that inside a formula, and then have that be. So if you wanted it to be 3 days, and within 3 days or 60 days, you put that as essentially your formula inside of a formula, or you put that as a date formula and return that value dynamically based off of the current date of your flow.
Oh, not a variable, but should I just create a formula here?
Yeah, and just you change the type to date, and then today minus -1.
All right, so now that we've got that variable, then we can have our lookup. Say we want accounts created yesterday. Aha! That might work. There we go. So use formula variables in your flow.
All right, great questions today. So we're at time. If you have any other questions, let's continue the discussion on our Success Community Salesforce Automation Hour. And we will talk to you next week when we have guest presenters, Stuart Adele. Have a great weekend, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.